Welcome to the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. Perryn Keys here, hanging out with Edward Scott Rabalais, who had a busy weekend, and Reed Darcey, who also had a busy weekend. We've got a busy weekend's worth of stuff to go through here on the LSU Sports Insider. Of course, LSU baseball drops 2 out of 3. Spring practice continues. Gymnastics is going on. Softball is going on. But, of course, the number one story here in this town at the moment, of course, is the LSU women in the NCAA tournament. They are through now to the Sweet 16, and we will discuss that at length, in addition to the SEC champion LSU gymnastics team. If you haven't seen, if you're looking for a place to catch up on spring football, check out our previous podcast. You can check that out on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com, and all our social channels, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. Rab, when is something interesting going to happen here on the LSU beat? It would be nice if there was something that we're just going to, it's always boring. There's never anything going on. Nobody says anything interesting. Nobody does anything interesting. What are we going to do about all this?
I know we're going to have to go and light some fires at LSU or something. I don't know. It's I don't know what other people do covering other schools. Like I was watching the Stanford women play basketball last night. Their football team is meh, and their men's basketball team is meh, and their baseball team is usually pretty good, and they have a lot of good Olympic athletes, but you never hear a whole lot of. Tiger Woods went there. Okay, yeah, that's exciting, but unless Tiger drops in, there's not a whole lot of drama going on there.
Maybe they're too smart for their own good. I don't know.
It could be.
Maybe they signed something, to private school. Maybe they signed something before they all enroll. Reed Darcey's first year on the LSU women's beat, and he's getting his money's worth.
It's been eventful, to say the least.
Season on the brink.
A lot has happened.
This is something else, and we've got at least one more week to go, if not possibly 2. So we will see about the LSU women in the Sweet 16, and of course we will discuss Kim Mulkey's surprising Saturday press conference, I suppose you would say. But first, let's get into a bit of business, as we always do. This is the LSU Sports Insider. We are coming to you every Monday and Thursday, as I said, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. Also on our social channels, specifically our YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. You can catch us there live every Monday and Thursday. If you don't catch us there live on Monday and Thursday, you can always catch us there after the fact. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to The Advocate, of course. Don't miss a moment of all the fun and games that are going on the LSU campus right now, not even including inside the PMAC. So The Advocate's always been the number one destination for LSU sports coverage. You guys know that if you're tuning in. So please subscribe if you haven't already, whether that's print or digital. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. Stay up to date with all the headlines. You certainly don't want to miss a moment, not right now. You can get all the headlines delivered straight to your inbox, to your phone, to your desktop. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. And of course, we are brought to you by Champion Wealth Strategies. Champion Wealth Strategies is a national financial services firm specializing in the capital markets, securities, insurance, 401ks, and college and retirement planning. Our broker-dealer is LPL, financial member FINRA, SIPC. As you know, investments are not FDIC insured, may lose value, and have no bank guarantee. To learn more, go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. So, gentlemen, let's talk a little LSU women's basketball for the majority of this podcast, this fine podcast, because there's always something fun going on, seems like. And in all seriousness, LSU, of course, enters the tournament as a number 3 seed, number 3 in the very rough and tough Albany 2 region, probably the toughest region. I think that's sort of agreed upon, generally speaking, across the nation. They start off against Rice. They do not look like a well-oiled machine, frankly, against Rice. They sort of muddle through. They beat them 70-60. And then they start off slowly against Middle Tennessee and find themselves in a fight before they really turn it on. First things first, Rab, I'll just sort of get your take on these 2 games this weekend and what it tells you about LSU, if anything.
Yeah, it's not entirely different from the way they played in the NCAA tournament leading up to the Final Four last year. You know, they certainly ground their way through that regional final against Miami, and the Hawaii game to start the tournament last year wasn't always the thing of beauty. 24 turnovers is a lot. The LSU, I think Reed would agree, LSU plays kind of a high risk style. You know, they're always looking to push the ball up, you know, length of the court passes and you know, go fast and try to beat the other team down the court. And you're going to have some turnovers, but 24 a season high, that was really over the top, and a lot of unforced errors by LSU. Rice was a scrappy team, but you're like, they had like 14 losses coming in. I mean, they were like someone who should push you, but they got through it. That's not totally uncommon. And then they kind of seemed like the same thing. They were down 9 points early in the second half to Middle Tennessee, and then they just. It was hard to flip the switch in the postseason, but they did. I think it was 39-8 the rest of the game after they got that far behind. And
after they went down 9,
yeah,
it was 51-15.
51-15. Okay.
They scored 51 points in the second half. Yeah,
and it was 39-8 run at some point in there, but 51-15 in the second half. And it was I was told to be no math. You know, I'm a journalist. Back off, man. I'm a journalist. Don't ask me to do numbers. And so that's the team that looked like they can play with anyone in the NCAA tournament, including vaunted South Carolina. Right. So that's the team they got to be in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight if they get there, and obviously they can. LSU has some obvious shortcomings. You know, not a deep bench. Their shooting. Doesn't the shots don't fall sometimes, but they can get 2 double-doubles from Reese and Morrow, and if they get one of the players outside to play outstanding, and Flau'jae Johnson I think played outstanding. In both games, especially yesterday, they can get at least her or Williams or Van Lith to score like they did. They're a tough out, right. And but that's the team they got to be when they go to Albany.
Reed, the opening game, LSU 70, Rice 60. Aneesah Morrow winds up leading the team with 15 points, and I'm going to refer to my notes here. If I'm not mistaken, she was one of 4 players in double figures. But this was, again, as we say, this was not what you would call a vintage performance. 4 of 15 from the floor in the first quarter. Just looked very sloppy. And frankly, this was, the atmosphere seemed like it was getting a little tight there in the PMAC for much of the game.
Yeah, definitely. It was very tight throughout that game. It was just really a sloppy game, you know, and Kim Mulkey said after the game, it reminded her of, you know, that, like what Rab mentioned, that game against Miami in the Elite Eight last year when she told everybody to turn off the TV, you know, if they were watching. And even in the Middle Tennessee game, like, you know, at the start of that second half, I was getting ready to write the obituary on the season.
Yep.
You know, they were down 9, right? Yep. And then they flipped the switch. And I think the story, if you ask me, across those first 2 games, story was the free throws. If you look at the discrepancy in free throws that they got over those 2 games, it was really huge. Middle Tennessee, they outshot them. LSU had 37 free throw attempts. Middle Tennessee had 9. And it was pretty similar in the game against Rice. I don't have the numbers
Rice
in front
was
of me.
6 of 8. LSU was 22 of 31.
Yeah, so that's how they got through those 2 games. Right. You know, it's the free throws. And there's already a little bit of discourse online about, you know, LSU's home. They got a good whistle, you know, against Middle Tennessee. You know, the discrepancy shouldn't have been that large. But if you look at the numbers, Middle Tennessee, half of their shots were 3-pointers. Mm-hmm. You know, they took 31 threes. Mm-hmm. So if you take 31 3-pointers, you're not going to get to the foul line as often.
Probably because, and I still wouldn't necessarily unsubscribe to the theory that maybe LSU got a friendly whistle more occasions than Middle Tennessee did. But by the same token, there's probably smart thinking on the part of Middle Tennessee, and it worked for a good long while because probably against Aneesah Morrow and Angel Reese, you're not gonna do a whole lot of damage inside. You had to be able to shoot from outside and score and listen, score they did for quite a while. As you mentioned, they were up at halftime and they went up 9 in the third quarter before and we're gonna get to Flau'jae too because boy did she turn it on. But LSU was on the ropes. If I'm not mistaken, Angel and Kim Mulkey both said after the Rice game that like we play like this against anybody else, we're pretty much done.
Yes.
And they played very similarly in the first, 2.5 quarters against Middle Tennessee. So it was certainly good to see them turn it on. Let's talk about Flau'jae Johnson because she obviously, Reed, as you made mention many times now, did she have a hell of a performance in the SEC tournament to start off, having turned it on, and then certainly led the way to one degree against Rice, but most certainly led the way against Middle Tennessee. 21 points, team high. Morrow and Reese both had double doubles, as you made reference to, but it was not only 21 points, it was her fire, and it was certainly her spirited play on defense as well. I thought.
Third quarter, I believe she had 2 steals and a block, or 2 blocks and a steal, or something like that. She made, one of the best plays I've seen in a while, where she sort of blocked Middle Tennessee, like a floater attempt, I guess, and it was a jump ball and possession the other way, and she sort of stared her down and then just grabbed the ball and took it the other way. That was really cool. So all the talk after the game was about how their defense leads to their transition offense, and what they really need to do to really get their offense going. They need to run. They need to get out in transition. That's when they play their best offensive basketball.
And to do that, they got to get stops.
You got to get stops. They weren't getting stops throughout the first half and at the start of the third quarter. Once they start getting stops, then you could see the transition offense come alive, and then it snowballs from there. And you see exactly what this team is capable of. Like it's been like this throughout the season. There are peaks and valleys, and the peaks are really, really good. The valleys are sloppy. They aren't great. So it's sort of like, it's always been a challenge to sort of figure out exactly what this team is, and it's always been a challenge for them to find that consistency. But if they are playing as well as they can be, if they're hitting their ceiling, they're one of a few teams that can win the national title this year.
And you say, well, hey, maybe that's, and I know we've discussed this on the last couple of podcasts, but hey, maybe it's this championship hangover, like they aren't necessarily as focused as they were before. I don't buy that for a minute, because going back to what you just mentioned, Rab, the Miami game last year in the NCAA tournament to get to the Final Four, that was a rock fight. Again, and I keep on meaning to look up her name, but the young freshman from Utah who they played in it was a Sweet 16, right?
Yes.
She was something like an 84% free throw shooter. She makes her free throws, and LSU's done. Their march is over. So, and then of course they get to the championship game, and as Kim Mulkey herself said, she's never had that happen where her team plays its best game, its absolute best in the championship when you absolutely needed your best game from Jasmine Carson and Alexis and whoever else. So it's going to be an interesting sight, of course, as we go down the road. I was going to ask you, I'll start with you, Rab, just before, and yes, believe me, we're going to get to the Kim Mulkey address. Whatever you want to call it. But I just was curious to ask you about the atmosphere in the game, for both games. I know it was certainly jumping in both games in the PMAC, but in particular the second game. And I mentioned this to you before the mics got hot, as they say. I'm curious to know if you feel like this is an apt comparison. I'm reminded of the 2019 men's game between LSU and Vanderbilt to close out the regular season. Will Wade gets suspended. And all of a sudden, Auburn, it was Auburn, right, who lost earlier in the, was it Tennessee? I can't remember now.
I don't remember.
Whoever it was, they had a chance to win the championship, win a share of the championship going in, and somebody lost earlier in the day.
LSU had to beat Vandy to win it outright.
Right, which then gave LSU the opportunity to beat Vandy that night to win the championship outright. And, of course, Joe Oliva at that time was public enemy number one because this suspension had just come down. I mean, it was this weird combination of this is a celebration, it's a party, it's, the crowd's having a blast, but there's also sort of this undercurrent of everybody in the world is like out for blood and wants a little venom and is, hostile at their own AD and hostile at the situation that just unfolded with Will Wade getting suspended. I'm curious to know, it's not a perfect analogy, but I'm curious to know just sort of what the atmosphere was like. Was there any of that in the atmosphere in the PMAC on Sunday afternoon?
I hate to put a pin in your long preamble about your question, but I didn't feel there was the same atmosphere. I'd never seen
Okay.
anything like that before or since in in any sports venue.
was
like you
one-
had for the
that was
LSU
one
Vandy
for the
game
ages,
in
man.
2019. But you had someone in the arena for people to
Right.
focus. I mean, Joe Oliva should have gone home and not come to the game. And he goes and sits in his regular seat right by the court and behind the bench, and everybody knows he's right there, and they're just blasting him. They're cheering and they're booing and they're chanting. And I've never seen anything quite like that. A combination of celebration and anger. Was there a little bit of anger? Yeah. I mean, look.
Defiance? Isn't there some defiance in the crowd?
Look, Kim Mulkey taps into something that with the LSU fan base is like defined. Like I'm from Louisiana.
Right.
I was born here. I was born in Baton Rouge. I was raised here. I went to LSU. There is a feeling of that everyone else looks down on Louisiana.
Well, 49th and 50th and everything.
But when you get once in a while, you have somebody who's really excellent or something that's really excellent. And she's from Louisiana.
Right.
She's not only winning here, it's not like even different from like when Nick Saban came here and won and everything, or at Alabama. She's from here. And people can say she's ours. I'm not talking in the we sense because I'm being a reporter here, and I have to have that distance. But there's that, and so there's that love for her, and then she lifts everybody up and makes them feel good about. Forgetting that the 49th and the 50th rankings and all that stuff, they were number one last year.
Right.
Number one.
Right.
And that's something Jay Johnson and the people love the baseball team for winning the national championship. But that's something that Jay Johnson it's not quite the same for him because he's from California. Mm-hmm. No offense to him, but it's just different. And so there's a little bit of that. I would say with all this talk about the Washington Post story and everything, and of course you're referring to the press conference she had on Saturday, the between day press conference. Obviously, people were aware of that, and there was some support of her, but compare if the LSU Vandy game in 2019 was a 10 on that meter, I think this was a 3. In terms of that anger being part of the or wanting to defend her being part of their reaction to the game. It was just tremendous. Both games were a tremendous atmosphere.
Yes,
and I will say this too. There's never been anything like this in the PMAC. She has galvanized the fan base to such a point where. And of course, all women's basketball has enjoyed a renaissance of popularity with these great personalities in terms of players and coaches and whatever, but and great crowds everywhere and TV ratings and all that. But in the Simone Augustus, Sylvia Fowles days, when they'd host NCAA tournament games, and they didn't every year because it was a slightly different format, the PMAC would be half full. And it would be loud.
Is that right? Really?
So yeah, they'd get 6,000 or 7,000, wow. for a game. And in the Nikki Fargas days, it'd be 3,000 or 4,000.
A couple hundred.
Yeah. So well, I mean, for the NCAA tournament games.
Okay. There weren't many of them.
You have to buy more tickets. No, there weren't. You have to buy more tickets. If you're a season ticket holder and they have a lot, you have to, buy another ticket package for the NCAA tournament. So
right.
People have to make that commitment. I mean, 3:00 on a Friday afternoon. The place was
jumping.
It was pretty full, and the atmosphere was really great. Yeah. A lot of apprehension, but it was great. And then yesterday it was even better. The players commented after the game. I saw. I didn't talk to them. I didn't go in the locker room, but Haley Van Lith and Angel Reese said, it was hard to hear. Haley said it's hard for me to make the plays heard, and Angel Reese said I'm looking at the bench to see I got the play right, and. So it was tremendous, like maybe not quite nothing I've ever seen in the PMAC. But I wouldn't say it was exactly like 2019 with the men's game.
That's fair. I really did. I was not in the arena, so I did want to put it to you guys because that was the vibe I was getting off the TV. Just the part of the reason I say that is because it was just, it was loud and lively in the second half during breaks, for free throws and timeouts and things of that nature. It's just, the crowd was on it. And I don't think there's any question, if I'm not mistaken, either Van Lith or Angel or maybe both had mentioned just what a difference that crowd made in terms of being able to get them to focus and turn around. If that game had been in Albuquerque, New Mexico or someplace like that, this might have been a whole lot tighter. They might not have turned the corner and turned it on in just the way they did. This is the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. You know where to find all the writers' great work. That's at The Advocate, so please subscribe to The Advocate if you have not already. whether that is print or digital or both. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. Again, I know we've said it many times, but no time more so than now. There is quite a lot going on campus, quite a lot of stories going on at the moment, and so of course the best way to keep your arms wrapped all around them and stay up to date with everything, you can get our newsletter sent straight to your inbox. To do that, to sign up, you can go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are here on Mondays and Thursdays on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever other finer podcasts are found. And of course, we are here live on all our social channels every Monday and Thursday, specifically our YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. You can catch us there live. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us after the fact. So please subscribe to that channel and don't miss a moment. That way you won't miss a moment. And speaking of which, if you're looking for maybe a spring football update or some other stuff, you can check out our previous podcast. There's an update on baseball as well. Our previous podcast where Wilson Alexander broke down spring football, what he has seen to this point. And of course, Cokie Riley heading into the Florida series had discussed some of the things that were disappointing going into that series and evidently still are.
No less disappointing now.
That's right. As LSU drops 2 of 3, and this is going to start to get to be a little concern, I think, here before too long. Long way to go, obviously. But LSU certainly felt like they had a deep enough pitching staff to get them through, and they've been run ruled twice now in 2 SEC weekends. So that is something certainly to check out and keep an eye on. So anyway, you can catch up with all our previous podcasts on that same YouTube channel. And of course, we are brought to you by Champion Wealth Strategies every Monday and Thursday on this fine channel. So please go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. So LSU is into the round of 16. We don't yet know. This is, of course, midday Monday, and we won't know whom LSU will face in the round of 16 up in Albany, New York, where these two fine gentlemen will be basking in the sun and the beautiful weather.
Can't wait.
I asked Reed. I said he's getting an early start on his bucket list by going to upstate New York
In March, right? It's exactly
at such a young age.
the
Good
hot
for you.
destination. Yeah, I mean it's either San Juan or upstate New York in the middle of March. But we don't know who they'll play, but because they are awaiting the winner between 2nd seeded UCLA and 7th seeded Creighton, who play Monday night. And on the other side of the bracket, number 1 seeded Iowa is playing number 7 seeded West
Colorado.
Playing Colorado.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Colorado's 5.
But no, aren't
No,
they?
they don't play them yet.
Right, that's what I'm saying. They're playing West
that's
Virginia.
Right.
Yeah. So they're playing West Virginia tonight, and we will. But let's play pretend here just for a moment, and let's just say that the favorites win, that the chalk wins out from here in these last 2 games. If that is the case, in the Albany 2 regional, it will be number 1 seeded Iowa versus number 5 seeded Colorado on one side, and then number 2 seeded LSU versus number 2 seeded UCLA versus number 3 seeded LSU. So let's play pretend here for a moment and just say that LSU is going to face UCLA up in Albany for its next game. We don't know this yet, but we'll. And you know what they say about assuming as well, but let's just say that's going to be the matchup. What would you say, Reed, in terms of this is what LSU has to do to be able to come out with a victory and be able to make it to the regional final in what is a rough and tough and rugged regional?
They have to defend really well. UCLA, they have Lauren Betts, who's 6'7". She's one of the best pros in the country. She's a center. She missed the last game with a foot injury. I'm not really sure if that's going to, be a long-term type of deal, or if it's going to keep her out of the Sweet 16. But it's something to watch. But even if they don't have her, they have a player named Kiki Rice who really led them through their round 1 win. So LSU's going to have to defend. It always comes down to defense for them. We saw that in the first 2 rounds. If they defend, they can run out in transition, and that's when they're really at their best. So you just watch how LSU defends, how they rebound, and how they get out in transition. And I think if they can really, ignite that transition attack, then they can beat anyone in the country, and that includes UCLA. Even if they have those two stars who can sort of match them on offense.
He certainly Reed's a voter on the AP women's basketball poll this year, so he's watched a lot of these games. Watched them more than me. I've spread a little thin looking at all the different sports and everything. I will say probably another thing is a slight advantage for LSU. It's a long way to travel for everybody, but UCLA is playing at home on tonight. LSU's had an extra day of rest, and then they're going to have to go all the way across country to Albany. I'm sure they would love to be in Portland, or Oregon, the side of the other region. I'm sure they would have much preferred that, but they're going to have to go all the way across the country to play Saturday against LSU at a time to be determined. But they have an excellent team. People thought from the beginning of the season they were excellent. I don't think they've lived up to it. And it was as Jay Clark, the gymnastics coach, likes to say, it was a meat grinder. The Pac-12 in its last.
Yeah, that's a great point. Pac-12's been the best conference, in the country, in its last season. So they're battle tested. They've played a lot of really good teams, a lot more good teams than LSU has certainly played. So they've been through that meat grinder, as you said, and they've gotten through it so far, and so it'll be interesting. I haven't dove into the numbers too closely yet, but it's going to be difficult for LSU to get to the Final Four.
You mentioned rebounding. It gives me an opportunity to just bring up, we know about Angel Reese. What did she have? Yes, just something like 19 points and 11 rebounds, or excuse me.
I think she had 19 rebounds.
20 points, 11 rebounds. I apologize.
Okay.
Double machine. But this is a perfect time for me seemingly to bring up Aneesah Morrow and just how, she quietly herself had a double-double for being only, 6'1" maybe? Just absolutely gets the most out of what she's got, and just how important not only Angel going up against a 6'7" opponent, but Aneesah being able, both of those two players crashing the boards as much as they can, and maybe to a lesser degree Del Rosario. You mentioned, as we discussed earlier on this podcast, the being able to get a stop and get out in transition, just how important that is, and just how important that Aneesah Morrow and some of these other players will be, despite being at a height disadvantage, if indeed UCLA does make it through to the Sweet 16. So something to note. On the other side, Iowa, we presume that Iowa will take care of West Virginia, and if so, it'll be Iowa versus Colorado. These are two teams that LSU knows a little bit about. Sure. Give us a Reed, if you would, give us a 30-second breakdown of these two teams, Iowa and Colorado.
Iowa, Caitlin Clark, there's nothing you can do with Caitlin Clark. She's going to score 25 to 30, 35 points no matter what you do. So LSU, if they do face Iowa in the Elite Eight, they're going to try to prevent the other Iowa players from beating them.
She didn't shoot that well in their first round game, though.
No, she didn't. It wasn't her best.
It was kind of an off night for her. But you're right. You
still
have to
put on a show.
You have to expect
that's how
she's going to get hers. You got to defend the rest.
That's how they approached the national championship game. They were like, we're going to let Caitlin get hers. There's nothing we can do about it. We got to take care of everyone else and make sure no one else scores 10, 15 points a game. So that's Iowa. That's going to be the challenge with them. Colorado, I still come back to that season opening game. It's like, it's a bad matchup for LSU. Jalen Sherrod is really quick, really dynamic, really good at attacking the rim. LSU has sort of struggled to contain dribble penetration at times this season. Then they've also got a lot of size around the rim. They've also got a lot of shooting as well, and so that's going to be difficult for Angel and Aneesah to handle around the rim. They did a poor job in the season opener of, Aaron Vonleh of guarding her around the rim and getting rebounds. So it'll be a good measuring stick to see exactly how much LSU has improved from the first game of the season. Colorado, it's a bad matchup for LSU, and they can easily beat them again, I think.
Fascinating. Again, as we discussed, this is easily, in everybody's opinion, most everybody's opinion, that the Albany 2 Regional is the toughest. And I know we discussed this on the previous podcast. It says everything that the number 5 seed in this regional is somebody that has beaten LSU and is capable, seemingly, of beating anybody in that tournament. Had 9 losses. It's the reason they're 5 seed. They didn't have a great regular season. But again, as we've said over and over and over again on this podcast, Colorado came out in that season opener, wanted a piece of LSU, and got them. And wouldn't it be ironic, incidentally, and we're getting way, way, way ahead of ourselves here, but let's just say LSU takes care of UCLA or Creighton in this, and then they go play either Iowa or Colorado, and then ultimately in the championship game, again, we're doing a
Just
whole lot.
for instance,
Yes, for instance. We're not saying this is going to happen or that we're banking on it, but let's just say that this we're going to go all the way to the end. Then you go play South Carolina in the championship game. This could be a little Kim Mulkey revenge tour, Angel Reese revenge tour, all the way through to the championship. And frankly, I think this team has shown over and over again that they've got kind of the right attitude to be able to do that. They're not going to shy away from a fight, so to speak.
Reed's analysis is quite sound about Colorado. I think LSU would love to get a second shot at Colorado.
I think they would.
I think attitude counts for a lot, and obviously they're playing better defense than they did then. Doesn't mean there's not still a tough matchup for LSU or a bad matchup, but I think they would. But predictions are always fun to make. I got to pick on Reed just a tiny bit yesterday. We're sitting there courtside at the game, and he said, "I don't think Del Rosario is going to play at all today. She can't handle the quickness." I said, "Yeah, you're probably right," and probably right. Yeah, and as if on cue, she popped up off the bench to come in. Into the scores table to come in the game.
Shows what we know, right?
Shows you what I know.
But no, he's been great, and it was very well. Whenever he says something, it's very well reasoned. He's got a good reason behind it.
But it's just like anything in sports, right? Every time you think you've got something clocked, boy, look at this. Speaking of surprises. Reed, can you walk us through? You're there doing your job on Saturday in between days, between LSU's first round game and their second round game. And for those who don't know, obviously, in most cases now anymore, colleges are sort of very protective of their coaches and players. They make access, frankly, pretty limited to specifically players, especially. And this is more the case with football. Kim Mulkey, to her credit, actually is very. She's very accommodating with herself and with her players, actually, to the press. But generally speaking, access is not 100% until you get to the NCAA tournament, because it's open locker room policy. You can go talk to anybody you want to, freshman, somebody who's been through God only knows legal troubles or something like that. They're all there to be able to interview. And so, Reed, you're there on Saturday at the PMAC, at the media availability. I'll just let you sort of take it from there.
Yeah, kudos to NCAA for giving us that access.
Yes,
it's really great. It's really unique. It's not something we get very often. So, in my eyes, I'm trying to take advantage of that. There's about a 30-minute window in between games in the locker room to get to talk to players. So it sort of bounced around as many people as possible. Talk to them a little bit, get to know them a little better. And what the NCAA does, they take the press conferences and they put the transcripts on a media portal, a media hub. So I'm like, all right, I'll just get quotes from Mulkey, on the transcripts. And so after they close the locker room and then Mulkey's done with the press conference, I walk into the media room and I ask some of the people in there, I'm like, "Oh, she say anything interesting?" And they sort of laughed at me. They're like, "Ha ha ha." And I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? What did I miss? And then I pull up Twitter and I see the videos and I'm like, this is going to be something that we'll have to deal with. So I don't know. It's just like, I think we were all shocked and surprised. We saw the tweet from Pat Forty about the Washington Post story. It's just a really weird situation all around, a really unique situation all around. So I'll defer to you guys.
And if our viewers are wondering where was Rabalais, I was in New Orleans at the SEC Gymnastics Championship.
There's plenty going on. I've got to be honest with you guys. I don't remember. I was home on Saturday, working from home, and I can't remember what exactly I was up to, but I was up to something else. And then our group, we have amongst our LSU beat team, there is a group chat. And a certain somebody in the group chat just posted a mushroom cloud, and I frankly didn't know what this was all about because I had not heard or seen anything. I was off doing something else. And then, of course, we all get quickly apprised of the matter. Kim Mulkey opens her Q&A session with about a 4-minute statement that she's clearly reading from, where she's very much on the defensive, saying that a reporter from the Washington Post, who we know to be Kent Babb, is working on what she calls a hit piece or a hit job on her. She has decided to not speak to him over the past 2 years while he's been trying to work on a profile on her. And to be clear, before we're going to get too deep into this story as of midday Monday has not dropped. We don't know what's in it, so it's very, very difficult for us to even speculate on what may or may not have been out of bounds, what probably was certainly inbounds, and we'll get to this because we all feel like the Washington Post will have lawyered the hell out of this story before it comes out. So whatever's in there is in all likelihood going to be true to one degree or another, because they're not really too keen on getting sued and losing in court. So, but she threatens to sue the Washington Post and said if there's a false story published about her. Took issue with the Washington Post giving her and LSU what she said was 48 hours to respond to a series of questions, and says she has hired the best defamation law firm in the country, unnamed to this point, to defend her against any and all possible slander, libel, however you want to put it. And so, Rab, I will just say this, and I'll use my own words first, just to throw my 2 cents in there. But you're the columnist, and I will say to you, I'll say this, and then I'll put it to you. On the one hand, this does not necessarily surprise me because Kim Mulkey does not shy away from a fight. On the other hand, it surprises me in the sense that, no matter how you slice this, I think it's perfectly reasonable to conclude that whatever Kim Mulkey's intentions may have been, she has drawn an extraordinary amount more attention to what this story will be if and when it comes out. I mean, if she's trying to get this thing squashed, all she did was just take a flamethrower to it and blow it up that much more, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, conventional wisdom says, see what the story says. Maybe it's going to be something that you really take offense to. No, we don't know. Maybe it's going to be something that you really find offensive. Maybe it will not. And let's go back a little bit first, a little bit of context. Kent Babb is the writer who 2 years ago wrote a story about Brian Kelly when he first came here, making $10 million a year while there's all this poverty in Baton Rouge, Kim referred to that as a hit piece on Kelly, and I've read that story. I wouldn't exactly call it that.
I didn't think it was a hit job on Kelly, frankly.
No, I think it was more. You could say you could have written that story in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, about Nick Saban and Alabama and the community and the poverty there.
Right. It was a depiction of a college town that happened to have been Baton Rouge.
But it could have been written about Steve Sarkisian and poverty in Austin, or Ryan Day and poverty in Columbus, Ohio, or Kirby Smart, not Athens. You could pick the college community. But again, we feel a little picked on in this state sometimes, for better or for worse, and that happens. And so I think conventional wisdom would be that you wait to see what it says and then react to that. But when you, from a journalistic standpoint, when you see someone trying to, clearly she would like the story not to come out. It makes it look like you have something to hide.
Right. I'm
not saying she does, but you give that appearance. I don't think the folks at LSU would have picked her to make this statement clearly, but Kim Mulkey does what Kim Mulkey is going to do.
Right.
Kim Mulkey does not play the game.
Right.
And for better or for worse.
Right.
And sometimes it's to her detriment. Sometimes she has put herself in position over the years to be criticized. But I think. And if this reporter talked to disgruntled former players, I think you can find disgruntled former players anywhere. I think you can find disgruntled former players on the LSU men's basketball team this year. And we just saw,
particularly in this day and age when everybody transfers, you can find. Now, I will say this: it wouldn't surprise me. We don't know for sure because nobody's going to keep data on this, and I don't know how you would ascertain data or make a judgment call. But it would not surprise me if there were a larger percentage of disgruntled players who leave Kim Mulkey's program than the average college basketball coach.
And why?
Because she's not for everybody.
She's not for everybody, and she's tough. She holds people to a high standard. And if I may use the case, some guy tweeted last night. I don't know who this is. Some talk show host in Texas saying, "I don't miss covering her at Baylor. She was very difficult to deal with." Like I said one time after going into the season after they won a title, Coach, you're the defending national champions, and she cut him off saying, we're not the defending national champions. We're not defending anything. We want, and she's right. You don't defend defending national champions is a misnomer.
Right.
I've tried to get away from that statement.
Yes.
You're LSU's the reigning national champions. If they don't win this year, nobody says, well, you got to give us back the trophy
They're
from
not
last
taking
year.
away the title.
So that's a very small thing. But my point is she holds a lot of people to a high standard, and that's not for everybody. Yes, she's going to have disgruntled players, just like I'm sure Gino Auriemma does, just like I'm sure Pat Summitt did, just like Tara Vanderveer at Stanford does, whatever. And then she got people who love her. She embraced one of her former players who's an assistant coach from Middle Tennessee before the game yesterday.
Nina Davis.
And I will say that if I don't know. Again, we don't know what the story is going to say, but the flip side of it is, would Angel Reese have stayed for a second year if Kim Mulkey was, this Nazi in high heels, as people want to portray her to be? Would Aneesah Morrow, who could have transferred anywhere in the country, have come to LSU if she was just this awful person, completely without redeeming characters? Would every member of her staff at Baylor, but one coach who wanted to stay in Texas for the retirement, to stay in the retirement system there, have come with her from Baylor? Because I can remember another coach who came here in 2000 who sent the plane. They sent the plane back to Michigan State for his staff, and no one got on it.
Sure.
That was Nick Saban, who's someone you could compare her to.
Again, to be fair, for every Alexis Morris, maybe not for every Alexis Morris,
Maybe not.
who got kicked off the team and still begged Kim Mulkey to take her back, and to this day will not bash Kim. She loves her. For every one of those players, I'm going to guess that there are maybe not one for one, but there are plenty of Hannah Gusterses of the world, and of course Brittany Griners, and all any number of them. She is not for everybody, and I'm going to guess that reputation is well earned. Tough. We don't know exactly what may or may not come out in this Washington Post story yet, so it's very difficult to speculate and to decide until we know. But again, you guys have heard me say this before. I know that Bobby Knight is not the most popular basketball coach in this town in particular because of all his run-ins with LSU, and not very popular among many fan bases. I would have loved to play for Bobby Knight. I know I'm in the minority, and I don't suspect for 1 second that I would have enjoyed. I feel like I probably would have been tortured by it. But look, with the benefit of hindsight, now having been in my 40s, I would have, because I think that type of guy, that type of coach, would have gotten the most out of me.
And Bobby Knight,
regardless of how I felt about him after the fact.
Yeah,
So,
you're right, and maybe that would have worked with your mindset, your personality. And look, there's a lot of things you could say about Bobby Knight that we've heard, and I'm kind of waiting to see, is this story going to have anything like that? Bobby Knight put his hands on players, and it was awful. Bobby Knight also had a reputation for not cheating.
Yes.
For running a very clean program.
Nearly 100% of his players.
Right. People, I guess the point I'm making is, if I may, I think it's human nature to want to put people in a box, and especially in sports. He's a good guy. He's a bad guy. She's a bad person. She's a saint. And once we've done that, we don't want to let anything change that opinion. But really, people are. I'm a shades of gray person. I don't see a lot of things black and white, and I think that a lot of people have different layers to them. And Kim Mulkey's got a lot of layers.
Yes.
No question. She is a complicated person.
Hey, look, both things can be true.
Both things can be true.
Bobby Knight
exactly.
could have gotten a whole lot out of his players, won tons of games, three national championships. Hey, what was it, 76, 81, it doesn't matter, 87. But
that's true. He very good.
Both things can be true. He could be a tremendously successful coach who's got thousands of people, ex-players in his corner, who will all say that he got the most out of them, and he deserved to be fired at Indiana. Both things can be true,
right.
and in that case,
That's right.
was. Those both things were true. To be perfectly clear, we have no idea what's coming out. It is so hard for us to speculate on what may or may not be in this Washington Post story. But yes, I don't think there is a person alive who would say that Kim Mulkey's got a lot of sub-layers to her. One thing I will say, just sort of in closing on this matter, is that if you spend any amount of time around her or know what her career has been like, I will say this, and I think this is fair to say about Kim Mulkey, whether it should be this way or not, Kim Mulkey is one who feels like you are either with me or you are not with me at all. You are 100% against me, and I am absolutely ready to go to war, metaphorically speaking, if you are not with me. So
Right. And if I may say
that is
so,
part
too,
of what's going to complicate this whole matter, and for that matter, maybe your legacy too.
Yeah, sure. And I think she Reed's covered her this year. I don't know if she agrees or not.
God bless you, Reed.
I'm keeping my mouth shut.
No, that's right. That's a good move.
I think she doesn't shy away from a fight, and in fact, I think she looks for things to sharpen her edge on.
Jordan-esque.
Yeah,
Somebody who played with her in the 84 Olympics.
Yeah, and I think that there are a lot more people in sports like that than people realize.
Right.
You know, you see with with golfers and stuff like that.
Jordan was looking for a reason to get PO'd. He would make
Right.
stuff up. In his own head.
Exactly right. That's a very common trait in sports, and I think she is 100%, because remember, she was a great player on the high school level. She was a great player on the college level. She was she's a great head coach, and you don't get that way without being extraordinarily competitive and have some passion to you,
Right.
And she is who she is, and doesn't apologize for it.
The question is whether there's an Icarus syndrome. That's you can always, the thing that makes you so great is maybe makes you fly a little bit too close to the sun. And so
again, like you said, nothing interesting.
Yes,
to talk about.
Nothing interesting going on. Well, speaking of a very non-controversial moment unfolding of events. Well, again, Rab, as you said, you were all too happy to be in New Orleans on Saturday.
Was I.
At the Smoothie King Center, where the SEC championships were going on. LSU claims the SEC championship, which is not necessarily a surprise, but they post a score of 198.075. This is their fourth championship since 2017. First things first, I'm curious to know what I don't suspect that session one, of which LSU was not a part, the afternoon session, that the atmosphere was packed to the rafters and everybody's going crazy and things of that nature. But I am curious to know what the atmosphere was like in session two when LSU was there.
It was obviously partisan LSU. There were fans there from some of the other schools, from Florida and Alabama and Kentucky. There's some sports. In fact, Gabby Glado, one of the Alabama gymnasts, her dad came and was taking video right near where I was sitting when she was on vault. It was great. It was a little bit under the attendance they had in 2019. They had 10,500 then. They had 9,800 something this time. But I think, as I wrote a story as well, that the people in New Orleans are very keen for it to come back. And I think the SEC is very interested in coming back to New Orleans, to the Smoothie King Center. So I think it was a successful event for everyone. And of course, very successful for LSU to win the championship and win all the individual titles that their gymnasts did.
Connor McLean with a 10 on beam. She was the only perfect 10 at the meet. Is that correct?
It was excellent. There are 10s and there are 10s, but it was.
Well, I do want to come back to that whole perfect 10 thing, and this is frankly probably a story we should do at some point here in the near future, if not this season, then soon. But going back to the meet itself, Haley Bryant won the all-around title. First things first, tell us what you think about all this, where LSU stands. 198.075 is nothing to sneeze at, but then, of course, we know that Oklahoma notched the highest score of all time, almost got all the way up to 199 at the Big 12 meet. So Oklahoma's a clear number one.
Going to be in the SEC next year.
Yeah, that's right. Coming into the SEC, so that's going to be tough. And they may have to actually incidentally adjust their style to compete in the SEC for reasons that we've discussed before on this podcast. But where does LSU stand as they wait to find out their fate in terms of where they go for the NCAA regionals?
Yeah, as Jay Clark has found a saying, you can't play defense in gymnastics. So you can only go there and do your best. And they're doing their best. They're back to number 2 in the country. They were 3. They went back to 2 with their performance they had the other day. This is counted as another road score. Their season NQS, which is you take the 5 best scores, throwing out the top score, and have to be 3 road scores, is like 198.210, which is it's got to be the best LSU's ever had going into the NCAA competition. So they're doing the very best they can, and I think this may, especially now it's validated with the SEC Gymnastics Championship meet title. This is probably looking like this could be their best team ever. Now, does that mean they can beat Oklahoma? No, I'm sure there were a lot of great teams that couldn't beat the Celtics when they were on that that championship title run in the 1960s. The Lakers were really good with Wilt Chamberlain, right? And they couldn't beat them. But all you can do is all you can do. And they were tremendous. They won or shared all the individual titles, which is no mean feat when you're going into you had the 4 teams earlier, but the 4 teams in the evening session were top 10. They were top 10 teams. Florida was number 4, Kentucky was 6, Alabama was 9 or 10, and then Haley Bryant won the all around. Connor McLean won the beam title, obviously with that. Ashley Cowan was surprised she shared the uneven bars title, and then KJ Johnson, who did the floor performance of her life, and Raina Worley from Kentucky shared the floor title, and Haley also won the vault title, which she won as a freshman in 21. If I may, I said I don't want to talk numbers, but I got to share some numbers with you on Haley Bryant.
Go on ahead, sure. Okay,
Haley Bryant is having a dream season. She's the number 1 all-arounder in the country. She's tied for first on vault. Obviously, a 2-time SEC champion this year. She's going 3 overall. She's performed 46 individual routines the course of this season. 43 of those have been a score of 9.90 or better, including the last 31 straight.
Is that good?
That's good. 25 scores of 9.95 or better, that's 54%. And of course, that includes 6 perfect 10. So a 9.95, the way judging works, it's in increments of 0.05. So you can get a 9.80, a 9.85, a 9.90, a 9.95. If you get a 9.95, that is you're just shy of perfection, according to that judge. And they had 4 judges of the meet the other night. The worst score she had was a 9.925. That's pretty. I mean, and again, gymnastics scoring is certainly subjective.
Yes.
But
when you do
the
that
consistency
often,
of effort, 31 straight. Her worst score this year is a 9.85, which is not bad by any means. It's a B plus.
Right.
It's not bad work, and I can't think. And I've covered LSU for a long time. I can't think of another athlete other than maybe like Chris Jackson or something like that I've ever seen at LSU who was this consistently excellent.
That's a bold statement considering all the exceptional athletes who come through LSU.
Bob Moore, the former LSU assistant, who was a longtime assistant for Dee Bro and for Jay Clark, I saw him before the meeting. He thinks she's the best ever.
Wow.
He thinks she's the best ever at LSU. And she might come back next year. She might come back for a 5th year.
Haley Bryant was incredible last year as well. You remember the run she had last year. It was similar. I think this year, it's safe to say she's having an even better year this year than she did last year. Given the standard she set for herself last year. So it's just like we'd be remiss if we didn't, sort of spend
over the last
time.
2 seasons, she's had 1 score less than a 9.80. She had a 9.775 at Kentucky early last season, January of 23.
Pretty incredible.
It's just incredible. If watch them if you can in the regional. Watch them if they make it to nationals, and if you haven't seen them, and hope like Jay Clark does that she decides to come back for a 5th season.
In the meantime, the NCAA regionals are April 3rd through the 7th at a campus to be determined where LSU will go.
This just in. This just in. We have breaking news on our podcast.
By all means, yes.
LSU is headed to Fayetteville, Arkansas for their regional.
Fayetteville.
They will compete on Thursday, April 4th. So they have this weekend off. Then they compete next week. So I knew they were going to Fayetteville or Ann Arbor because the other 2 regionals were at Cal and Gainesville, and they were too highly seeded, those schools, for LSU to be sent there. So LSU is going to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Familiar territory.
After the very familiar territory. After that is 2 weeks after that will be the championships in Fort Worth, Texas, April 18th through the 20th. We discussed Oklahoma will be the favorite, obviously, sort of a heavy favorite.
No question.
But I will say, Rab, you're going to remember this, and I think we might have brought this up on a previous episode, but there was one year where LSU went to the championships. On the first night, they had the highest score of any team that was at the meet, either day. And then on the second night, they didn't score so well, and so they finished as national runner-up. Had you been able to flip, because they still would have made it through, had you been able to flip those 2 scores, and the first score was actually what they had on championship night, they would have come home as a national champion. And you just never, who's to say that Oklahoma might fall down.
It doesn't take much. There was one year in Fort Worth, Oklahoma was on floor. One of their gymnasts stepped out of bounds, like Aaliyah Finnegan stepped out of bounds the other night, and Kaya Johnson and Haley had to hit on floor, and they did. But one more Oklahoma gymnast steps out of bounds, LSU's doing what they did was going to win, slip in and win.
Exactly.
So it doesn't take much. Fall off the beam or you miss the handhold on the bars or something like that. It doesn't take very much. But Oklahoma is going to have to help whoever wants to catch them. LSU, California,
correct,
Florida, Utah. They're going to have to give them a little help because obviously, as you said, they are the favorite, and rightly so.
LSU is a 3-time runner-up, national runner-up? Four-time national runner-up, still gunning for that first national championship. They will have every chance to do so, and we will know in less than a month whether they're able to do it. Obviously, in the meantime, we've got our hands full. LSU's got their hands full, the LSU women, trying to make it through the Albany 2 regional. It's been, March Madness, man. Men or women, it always delivers. We haven't had a lot of buzzer beaters on either side, but I'll tell you what, I'll be damned if Iowa State and Stanford didn't put on a show last night. And, of course, the A&M men against University of Houston last night, they put on quite a show, too. Oklahoma, Oregon, and who did they play? They took to overtime. Not Gonzaga, Creighton. The night before, so they took it to overtime, and that was
Gonzaga took it to the Will Wade's McNeese team. Unfortunately for the Cowboys,
that was a trendy upset pick, that was if you put some money down on that one, you lost it really, really quick, and you knew you lost it really, really quick. So, thankfully, I'm just happy I don't have the betting gene in me. It's good. It's kept me out of a lot of trouble.
Did you see the NCAA.com kept track of all the brackets on all the major bracket sites, and the best anyone did, they got to like 30-0. I think they got the first 30 games right, and then I thought it was pretty good. 30 or 31 games right, and there were no perfect brackets out of 31 million. There are no perfect brackets, obviously, going to the Sweet 16.
Yale over Auburn. I mean, come on,
just Yale fans. I mean, as it comes down to it,
right? But then if you have
Alabama fans, maybe,
right.
The best story I heard was the Oakland, of course, upset Kentucky, and their coach said they found that $8,000 worth of Oakland T-shirts got bought by people in Louisville.
Yes.
And he said, are they going to wear them when they play Kentucky next year?
I think there was a similar story, some years, whichever year it was when St. Peter's upset them. That there was a whole bunch of St. Peter's gear that got shipped to Louisville, Kentucky, because people were showing their gratitude. So Louisville still got to find a coach. Well, this is an LSU podcast. We're going to get derailed here very quickly, but obviously LSU, there's plenty and a lot going on as always on that campus. Gentlemen, it's just never a dull moment. We will see what happens next. Crazy days at LSU. They never really stop. They haven't stopped since 1986 or whatever.
Dale Brown comes to mind. Yes. What's going on right now?
So we will, of course, the Advocate's the number one place to stay on top of everything. Please subscribe to the Advocate. We've always been known as the number one destination for LSU sports coverage. So stick with us. If you have not subscribed already, whether that's in print or digital or both, please go to theadvocate.com/subscribe and join the party. Stay up to date with everything. Keep up to date with all the latest headlines. Get them all sent to your inbox with the LSU newsletter. To do that, go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are here on the LSU Sports Insider every Monday and Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. But more importantly, we are live on all our social channels, specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. You can catch us there live. If you don't catch us live, you can always catch us there after the fact, so don't miss an episode. Again, we did a little review of us, or a review to this point of spring football in our previous episode, so please check that out. In addition to this one, you can find all those episodes on our YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. And of course, we are brought to you every Monday and Thursday on the LSU Sports Insider by Champion Wealth Strategies. They've been with us all season, and they will continue to be with us, and we are certainly appreciative of them. Please go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. Gentlemen, have a great time in Albany. I hope you get to see at least one snowstorm, if not a dumpster fire, or perhaps both. We might be in the running for both.
Is it really going to snow?
I got to be honest, I have no idea. I just know it's upstate New York and it's still March, and a lot of times, speaking as somebody who grew up in the Midwest, it can snow in April, baby, and it can come down hard in April, so you just never know. So check that weather report before you pack.
I sure will.
For Reed Darcey, for Scott Rabalais, for Amelia Cotton behind the glass on Perryn Keys, this has been the LSU Sports Insider.